Hi, everybody. Welcome to our show. This is Kindness Beyond the Veil, where we'll look at supernatural topics like ghosts, the afterlife, psychic ability, UFOs, starseeds and earth angels, magic and mysticism, but not with fear and loathing everywhere. There's positive and even loving sides to these topics, and that's the light we'll shine on for this show. This is your host, Chip Reichenthal. I was kind of thrust into these curiosities in 1979 when my best friend through childhood came to me at the moment of his death, and I had to know why. Back then, you couldn't talk about that stuff without getting a freak label, so I was pretty much on my own looking into these mysteries early on. Answers would lead to more questions and side realms like magic, stars and planets, energy and physics, and lately, starseeds and earth angels. But I found there's no good and evil in an animal kingdom, no good and evil in a plant kingdom. I've never had a negative encounter with ghosts or the dead, now almost 40 years into this, and there simply doesn't seem to be many looks into these fields without all the fear and loathing. Isn't there enough of that in life? Well, we're going to steer away from that, look at the good in people and these topics. Every week I get to highlight my heroes in these fields for you, introduce you to them, even if you knew all about them.
Everyone can see
there is kindness beyond the veil. I've seen a lot of it. There's answers to be found on the kinder side of things. And if there's light on the other side, we'll bring it into this side as well. And benevolence, empathy,
this must happen once in a while.
The kinder side of science and phenomena, the kindness beyond
the intro's playing, guys.
I'm your host, Chip Reichenthal. We're so glad you're joining us. Come on in. Welcome.
There we go. Wow. We are back. We welcome you all with open arms to Kindness Beyond the Veil. This is your host, Chip Reichenthal. Today marks a very, very special episode here as we really endeavor into a whole new chapter of Kindness Beyond the Veil. We've got a whole new home-based network. We are now and very proudly heard on Trim Radio at WTRMradio.com, WTRMradio.com, where not only can you hear Kindness Beyond the Veil, you can also have access to archives of our newer broadcasts. You'll be able to get Kindness Beyond the Veil merchandise pretty soon, as well as merchandise for the other outstanding shows that air on Trim Radio, WTRMradio.com. But you can also watch the show as it airs live on Restream. That's Restream.io. And on your favorite social media sites, there's one on Facebook, I believe, running right now. But it's great to have choices for you all, beloved listeners or viewers. So we've got lots of choices for you now. And even though the show is designed to show you kinder and even loving sides of paranormal and extraterrestrial realms and psychic, metaphysical, spiritual, alternative healing realms, our true aim is to give you 2 hours of fascinating topics and guests, but without all the fear-mongering. Real life is scary enough right now. So it's our earnest wish to not only give you information and really keen insight into those realms, but also help you relax, feel better, even become better, and ways to help you be your best selves or help you find or enhance your own life path and leave a legacy behind that you could be proud of, to realize the true power of your intent, which is really astounding. And you can believe me when I tell you that every guest that I have on this show is someone who has personally enhanced my path in these realms or changed the way I've seen these realms over 4 decades of looking into them, or brings us amazing gifts or talents and insights that are really rare, amazing, beautiful, fascinating, and all of them personal heroes of mine, and all so we can share them with you. Because when all is said and done, it really is about you and for you. Graces and gifts you can enjoy, my beloved listeners and viewers, because you deserve it. This is our first new broadcast of Kindness Beyond the Veil in months. And in the words of legendary recording artist LL Cool J, don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. But to especially honor our return, we have brought you a very special guest today. And I'm really excited about that. I'm thanking my lucky stars that I can have him on, especially with you all in mind. Today's guest is Jack Elias, and you may have heard that name before because several of our previous guests have mentioned him on this show or on the Supernatural Realm, the big hit show that I had the honor of co-hosting with the great Tim Roxbury, who happens to be, I'm honored to say, producing this here show. Yep, so to Timmy there, as well as his big hit show, Supernatural Realm, which broadcasts right here on Trim Radio every Tuesday and Thursday in this same time slot, 7 to 9 p.m., Tuesdays and Thursdays. But, many occasions on that show where guests we talk to, they're mentioned. Today's guest, Jack Elias. You see, Jack Elias has this book, Finding True Magic. You might have even heard of it because it really set the standard. It set the bar in hypnotherapy and NLP circles. NLP is short for neuro-linguistic programming, and it especially and even exponentially refines the art of hypnotherapy and the understanding of our subconscious. And Jack Elias has transformed the art of transpersonal hypnotherapy, both in his works and with that book, Finding True Magic. And we have him for you on the very night before his brand new book comes out. So this is a huge event. And I should tell you that even though some of these topics and professions sound a bit complicated, you'll be surprised by how easy we're going to make them for you. But Jack Elias's brand new book out tomorrow called The Outrageous Guide to Being Fully Alive. Defeat your inner trolls, find your sense of humor, is not only already having a tremendous impact in the hypnotherapy and NLP circles, it's also, coming out tomorrow at the absolutely perfect time because we really need this book. I'm going to give you one word, beloved listeners, and I want you all to think about it just for a moment, okay? That word, healing. Healing. Who really does that anymore? I mean, in ways that you can trust. Certainly seems like the medical profession is not healing in ways that you can trust. And don't get me started on the mental health profession or any of those medicines that you see advertised on TV where the side effects are worse than whatever you're taking them for in the first place. But our guest, Jack Elias, has been in the trenches for years, for decades. I mean, truly healing people in ways that stun them. I mean, his clients are asking him questions like, oh, my God, how did you do that? Jack Elias's brand new webinar, which starts in May, so he got it just in time, is called Being Your Own Best Friend. And it is amazing. And you get to hear about that just in time, too. Trust me, beloved listeners and viewers, you're going to feel a lot better before this show is over. And his being here is our gift to you as our welcome back celebration. And he'll be on in just a few minutes. But first, some brief thoughts. And, then we're going to take a little extra time. So I ask the guest and everybody else to forgive me on this. We now have a name for these introductory segments. I'm going to call them chipisms from now on. I used to call them that. Very first paranormal radio show I was on over a decade ago called Keeping the Spirits Alive with my legendary friend John Tobin, who came up with the idea. And he's one of the greats. So in part to honor him, I decided to bring that term back and hopefully add some flavor to the new Kindness Beyond the Veil. And a lot of what I assume will be new listeners to this program. So we're giving you the basics here. And tonight's interview with Jack Elias as well. So our chipism today is about something I believe we see way too much of. Now, for the new listeners, I should tell you, or at least say out loud, I am not here to tell you how to think. A, it's disrespectful, and B, leave it to the mass media to do that, okay? But not here. Also, do not and will not incorporate politics or anything political. Outside of foul language, it's my only red line here, so we won't talk politics. And with all that said, we do see way too much of this thing we're talking about today, and I don't like it. Yet even from an objective standpoint, I've seen an egregious effort to amplify it. Its impact can only be harmful. And today I've got somebody here who is among the best people on the planet to banish it from your behold. Today's chipism is about fear. Now, I've got a passage here, maybe the best piece of screenwriting I've seen on television in at least 2 decades. It comes from a show that runs on one of those premium networks. The show is called American Gods. It's a really good show. And in this show, it's like there's a battle between the old pagan gods of old, like Odin and Thor, for example, and the newer gods that represent technology like smartphones and the internet. Since we seem to give more worship to the internet than we do to churches these days. So this passage comes from the most powerful of those new gods. And we got to credit the show writer for this powerful stuff. Okay, check this out. Ready? And it's regarding fear. People like the idea that love makes the world go round, but it doesn't. You don't lock your door at night because you love thy neighbor. You deadbolt that door with reinforced steel because you fear thy neighbor. Fear is order. Fear is control. Fear is safety. Fear is fiction. Before War of the Worlds frightened a nation, people did not believe an alien attack could exist because they never thought an alien attack could exist. And the fact that it was feared so deeply meant that it did exist. Fear is a product of the imagination that's made up in the mind. The mind can make up and think of anything. You love fear. You love horror. You'll pay money for a pair of 3D glasses and popcorn for an hour and a half of anxiety. Fear has no end. Fear is limitless. Fear thrives and feeds on itself, preparing you for calamity, preparing you to believe that the most important things are the most dangerous. If it's real in your mind, it's real in the world. The more you believe, the more you have. Now, that has to be one of the all-time great lines on TV. Again, credit to the writer of the TV show American Gods for such precise, if not pernicious, accuracy. Because if it's really true, well, actually it is. Fear is fiction. It's the most toxic what if of all what ifs. All right, I'm going to take you a little deeper now. We're going to take an imaginary walk together. All right, work with me here for a moment. You can close your eyes if you want to. Just work with me here a little. All right, imagine it's you and me hanging out and having some fun. All right, we're in a bar, pandemic notwithstanding. We've had a drink or two, got nice little buzz going, but we're having fun. We're having a few laughs, and our lack of inhibitions now is adding to that good feeling. And while we're having our fun, some really attractive people have walked past us and checked us out. People attractive above our pay grade, at least on our minds, and that really adds to the joys of the moment, all right? Stellar time we're having here. But now, a couple of stools down from us, there's this couple that's arguing, all right? Nothing more than a nuisance, really. But now this argument seems to be turning more into a fight, to the extent that it has stopped our conversation dead in its tracks. And slowly we're noticing that other people's conversations around the bar are stopping too, and now seem to all be focused on this couple. And you can feel the energy of the entire room change, because now we're in a bar, there's a couple on the verge of a physical fight, and it appears there's acquaintances around them that might take sides, maybe fight the fighting couple to punish whoever may hit whomever they side with. And you add alcohol into that mix, and it's even less predictable. And those moments of joy we were just having just a moment ago is like ancient history now. But what we have here is not fear. It's danger. And that's different. And welcome to the fight or flight response. Did you know that when you're in a fight or flight response, that the blood in your body drains from the brain, goes to your autonomic nervous system. That's your limbs, your arms and legs, in case you have to use them to defend yourself, in case you have to fight for your life or fight for your safety. In fact, every cell in your body is affected by that. Think about cells, your cells, all the cells, trillions of cells in your body. You know, why is one cell a bone cell and another one a muscle cell? Think about that. They were all part of the same zygote, so what's up with that? Well, the answer is comfort. Cells are where they are most comfortable. And the brain of each cell is not in the nucleus where we thought it would be. It's the cellular wall. And that wall has thousands of receptors on it. Most look for proteins and nutrients, as you might expect. But there are also receptors for emotional stimuli. So when we say some people are addicted to drama, for example, I'm sure we all know somebody, They are even addicted on a cellular level. And in a fight or flight response, it's as if like there's some civil fire drill alarm going off like they had in towns and cities back in the day in case of nuclear attacks. And every cell in your body is on alert. And the blood from your brain has diminished and gone to your limbs. So your ability to reason is diminished just when you think you need it the most. So then, Chip, why this imaginary walk that we just had? Well, because of fear. Danger is a real thing, but fear is an imaginary thing, and both place us in fight or flight responses just the same. If it's real in your mind, it's real in the world, and chances are all of us are likely going from one fight or flight response to another just about every waking minute of the day these days. Wake up, and what do you do first thing? Probably look at your phone. That thing that's now as radioactive as some actual war weapons nations designed 50 years ago, and you're holding it up to your head every day, and oh no, your Facebook post didn't get enough likes, or maybe somebody unfriended you. Oh no, family arguments at the breakfast table, few bad drivers on your way to work or school, and that jerk from work or school and on his game today, and on and on and on. Not to mention every single TV show or movie or newscast is either designed to your discomfort or outright scaring the crap out of you. And just try to find some fluff or feel-good entertainment when you're in the midst of a panic attack these days. And even infotainment or shows about science and history, finding new and different ways to scare you, things you never knew you should be afraid of. And it's been more and more and more amped up than ever. And I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. And everybody on the planet is very likely in some state of post-traumatic stress right now. Well, you know what, beloved listenership? This here Chipism is about fear, because this here Chip has decided to make a concerted effort to speak on behalf of the anti-fear or anti-fear, depending on where you're from, even and especially on a paranormal-oriented program. I mean, even ghosts and ETs aren't as scary as everyday life anymore. And somebody's got to be the comfort food. So I'll do it here on Kindness Beyond the Veil. So for 2 hours a week, you'll have a safe place to land every time you join us, and you're always welcome to. I kind of did that since I started the show a few years ago, but I'm driven to do it now. You know, Heather Wade, one of the most well-known radio hosts these days, actually called me the Bob Ross of radio. So no point in changing the canvas on that. And fate is on my side, it seems, because we start our huge comeback show with a guest that couldn't be more perfect for this ideal if I'd picked him out of a catalog. Not to mention a guest whose time I've eaten into with a longer than usual Chipism segment. So a huge welcome and huge apology to our honored guest today, who's made it his life purpose to change your lives for the better. Please join me in warmly welcoming the great and highly regarded Jack Elias to Kindness Beyond the Veil. Hi there, Jack. How are you doing today?
Hello, Chip. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to see
your passion.
Yeah, I thought maybe that would be interesting to you because it's among your fortes, really, helping people manage or overcome fear and anxiety. And it seems to be kind of a continuation process, just how I'd like to continue that drive to speak on behalf of the anti-fear between this last book and your new book, which is coming out tomorrow. The Outrageous Guide to Being Fully Alive, seems to, there are elements where you help people cope with their stresses, anxieties. Sadness is another thing, but fear, it seems to have been a major chunk of what you do. Do you think I'm overstating that, and how do you feel about it, especially?
No, you could, it's a lot of people might be familiar with the idea from Course in Miracles, where the basic issue is fear versus love. Mm-hmm. The fear is the root of every other kind of suffering. So it's completely appropriate. And I often will have a moment of a sense of absurdity. Like, what do I think I'm doing? Everybody knows this. What am I talking about? But then I'll realize, wait a minute, almost nobody knows this. I mean, people know it intellectually, but they don't know how to maintain themselves, how to stay sane.
Yeah.
So then I realize, it's simple, but it's ironically and tragically elusive. Almost no one holds on to it, and we can, just look at human history, look at the condition of the world today, as you mentioned, all unnecessary suffering, all based in fear.
It is. Yeah.
So what I try to do is help people understand, like you mentioned, it's a fantasy, which means it's a creation, and so people don't understand the fullness of their own position as creator. They think it's happening to them, and that's the biggest trick we play on ourselves, is that we create stuff that is self-attacking, and then we become the victim and we forget we're the creator.
Right. Well, I love how you put that.
Okay.
But it is very true. But it seems that we've had a lot of help. And look, I mean, a couple of years ago, we were still talking about, when we cover, especially the paranormal and extraterrestrial stuff. But when we talk to psychics, when we talk to hypnotherapists, when we talk to shaman, when we talk to people that really all kind of can be lumped in, I suppose, as spirituality kind of realms, they all find themselves intermingling. But at the same time, especially for our field, all the TV shows, they get more and more scarier. And all the new ones are getting more demon in the title or devil in the title, And it affects people in a way. I mean, I'm a certified hypnotherapist myself, a good understanding of the subconscious mind. So when I see people that lives have been one step forward, two steps back for a long time, they're assessing it to some demonic attachment or negative entity. They're giving their personal power away to some imaginary thing, and then adding fear, an imaginary thing, to that imaginary thing, and it starts to snowball. And when you and I are trying to get people to relax to the point where we can speak to their subconscious, we have to take these things that guard that subconscious mind, the judgments and the preconceptions and the biases and things like that, and say, take a coffee break. I got this, and then we can really talk to that supercomputer that has the emotional capacity of a 2-year-old and thinks it's doing you favors by, oh, you want to quit smoking? You know what? Let's smoke so much that you'll just get sick of it. Let's try it that way, type of thing. But watching the media from afar, that thing that scared everybody so much, my wife and I, we got it. We had it. All right. And half of the country doesn't even believe this thing exists. And who am I going to tell them otherwise, but their belief structure is coming from mass media. It's coming from social media. It's easier to find yourself in a group of people. You wrote a great article about creating your own reality. Boy, there's a long-winded segment to that one. But with so much help from mainstream media, mass media, entertainment, music, all kind of joining in just to make you uncomfortable on purpose or to outright scare you and create new things to scare you. That adds to the whole thing. But I like the way that, you use that to creatively, kind of distract us from ourselves, distract us from our fears. I think it's kind of brilliant, I mean, one professional to another in that sense. What inspired that for you?
The foundation of my work is from my lifelong study of Eastern traditions and practice, but also having the good fortune to keep the company of teachers who don't just teach it like a scholar, but who embody it, who, if you like the word, who are genuinely enlightened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the real people, as we say, some folks are real people, and term we used to use, but everybody gets that. They're always genuine. They're always the same person they were, a day ago, a week ago, a month ago. They're not wearing all sorts of faces. They're earnest in everything they do. I could just imagine how awesome that must have been. I have walked with shaman before. And that's something, because we grew up to think these indigenous, and a lot of those indigenous methods are similar to Eastern culture, Eastern methods, if you will. Very different from Western civilization. And normally we used to look down upon them. Oh, they're primitives. What do they know? Or foreigners. What are the aliens? Whatever you look at. Well, what do they know? We know so much more. But in the meantime, if you really learn these Eastern traditions or indigenous kind of practices, they're more loving, they're more fascinating, they're really more inclusive. Your thoughts?
Everything, whatever tradition, whatever name, wherever you go, you're experiencing your mind. It's all mind. It's all, and we forget that. That's the essential thing. Even deeper than fear is forgetfulness. Like when we say it, we wake up and agree, but in the next instant we go to sleep, and we act as if there are different things, as if there could be one thing versus another thing. Instead of remembering, our mind is generating all of that. Yeah, and I don't mean generating it out of thin air. Like you're not in charge of making the sun rise. But whatever you experience, like people think they experience the world, the external world, or even the internal world. But what is actually happening is that we perceive perceptual data through our sensory organs. Internal and external, seeing, feeling, smelling, tasting, touching. And the thing that we forget is that perceptual data means nothing until we give it meaning.
Right.
If perceptual data was the source of meaning and the source of power, we'd have no disagreement.
Right.
We'd all agree that red apple is the best apple. No one would say, no, green apple, because the red apple would be carrying the value. But our mind projects the value onto everything, which is why two people could be standing there eating freshly dipped ice cream from the same bin in the store, and one person takes a look and says, this is great, and another person takes a look and says, oh, I hate this. Same ice cream. Yeah. Same perceptual data. Mm-hmm. What we make of it is what we experience. We don't experience the ice cream. We experience what our mind makes of it, the value our mind gives it to us. Mm-hmm. So that's the fundamental delusion that we're in, is we think we're experiencing directly the world. We don't realize that we're experiencing our own mental activity.
Yeah, and I do love how you've expressed that and help us think about that, especially at a time where it's almost as if people, if people have interest in a certain topic for a hobby, for work, for whatever reason, they can always find information about it that's suited to their own taste. So now it was a what I want, when I want type of thing, this internet. Now it's a, what I want, when I want, and how I want now. And because it is flirting with belief systems, and it seems like people are encouraged or pushed into, feeding their own interests, feeding their own beliefs in the way that they believe them, based on exactly what we're talking about. This kind of thing is being fed. It's a poison that is, I don't want to sound paranoid or conspiratorial. I'm not that kind of guy, but we're talking about how we're creating our own reality by what we perceive in our senses and how we perceive it. But with that thing being fed and kind of in the same sisterhood or brotherhood as belief systems, people not only get the information that's suited to their taste, but they can become visceral about it. They can become emotional about it. Mm-hmm. They can even become, life or death defensive about it. When what you're talking about is none of that even has to happen, because it comes from an assumed place in the first place. And when we talk about creating our own reality, because you have in your blog, jackelias.com, for you listening and watching it, check it out. Fascinating. A list of wonderful articles and great topics, and a lot of sneak peeks on the webinar and book that are coming up that we'll talk about. But creating our own reality is something that you even mentioned. Sometimes you bring it up with people and they get almost defensive about it. Yeah, what do you mean? What do you mean? But if we can, put it out there, so we're looking at it out loud, so to speak. Not only are we creating our own reality based on and suited to our tastes, we're being pushed into and encouraged to, on a mass scale, keep doing that. Then it becomes a part of a belief system, and then it becomes emotional, and it could even become a life and death or fight or flight for you, which is all harmful stuff. And it doesn't really even exist in the first place, or you're not even sure about it in the first place. And that when you want to talk about a piece of that blog, creating your own reality. I'm not looking at it right now because I just this way I'm kind of half blind going into this and research at the same time, because we have to assume, for anybody that hasn't heard of you yet, they'll have no idea. Can you speak to that a little bit? People do get offended sometimes when you bring it up.
Yeah. Why do you so the first thing is there's certain kinds of underpinnings to the problem. One is forgetfulness, and the twin of forgetfulness is speed. Like, we have all kinds of moralistic judgments about what things are bad that cause problem, but the essential thing that causes problem is speed. We think so quickly, we don't inquire into whether what we're thinking makes sense. And in terms of what you said before about the hypnotherapy and people telling you I set the standard, it's not me personally. What I presented, which was new 34 years ago when I presented it, was new to hypnotherapists as well as ordinary people, was that we're in hypnosis all the time. That language is inherently hypnotic.
It really is. Yeah.
And so for one thing, our stream of very familiar self-talk is just one hypnotic suggestion after another. Mm-hmm. And we don't need the word hypnosis particularly. It's just a label. The thing is to understand the nature of what's going on is that it's suggestion. Mm-hmm. If somebody invites you to do something, a hypnotherapist or a regular person, if you say no, nothing will happen. But if you say yes, then something happens. But in terms of this so-called hypnosis, which initially for several hundred years was very paternalistic and was very much set in paternalistic society, basically big white men ordering women around. And so stage hypnotists present, very important to them to present that aura of being in control. But what the naive audience doesn't understand is that they are screening people while they're doing patter to see who's most agreeable.
Yeah.
Because if you don't agree, nothing will happen.
Right.
So we have the power, not the hypnotist.
Right.
We have the power, not the advertising.
Right.
But because we're so poorly educated and trained in relating to our mind, we don't realize we're agreeing.
We really do.
And because we're not, it's invisible to us that we're agreeing, we draw the erroneous conclusion that they are influencing us. As opposed to they're giving us information. It's very they're trying to make it tantalizing because they're trying to get us to agree. But if we don't agree, nothing will happen.
Yeah.
But without self-knowledge, we do agree, because it's all geared to how to take advantage of our ignorance of how our mind works and how to do it real fast so we can't tell the difference.
You mentioned stage hypnotist. I could never do that. It's a little too manipulative for my tastes.
Right.
But it does tie in what you said about language and how you can use language. But it also infers at least that body language is 90% of our communication process. Most people don't realize that or know that. You know, at least 90% of all our communication process is without saying a word. It's what we see, how people are standing, if they're standing the same way as you are, if they're standing too close, if they're standing too far. Of course, this is back in the day where we had face-to-face stuff, but still it applies. I want to ask you a dream question, because I really think, big psychology guy, that's why I really like the hypnotherapy and, it's just the coolness of understanding the mind, understanding the subconscious mind, all that's great stuff. And even working in the paranormal and extra stress, people have contact with things that are completely out of their belief system, their realm, their everything. And sometimes it creates a trauma for them, and you can tell because they're visceral when they relive these things. But it's still, the more and more you work in all of these kind of areas, at least for me, you understand that the true power of our intent, nobody's ever told us that. I don't think anybody's ever written about it. And I think that even if we knew the actual truth about our intent and how truly powerful it is, we wouldn't believe it. And I'd love to know your thoughts on the true power of our own intent.
Cultivating your intention is the core. It's the core. Every action we take during the day, any action we take starts with a motivation. So if you have developed and are aware of, what shall we say, a pure intention, loving intention, if you cultivate that, and that's where you start from, then that determines the nature of all of your activity in thought, word, and deed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was just talking with a client earlier today about how I've never really enjoyed or participated in the ritual of the New Year's resolution.
Me neither.
It seems kind of artificial, and the big cliche about them is that you keep them for a week or two and then you forget them.
Right.
So it's supposed to be an intention, but whenever you do so, it's important everybody to realize that we have a hardwired habit forming power, and it will create a habit if we do things repetitively, and it will take less repetition if it's also done vividly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is how we learn. The essential factor in learning is repetition and vividness. So even though it's all pervasive, not none of us, but very few of us have gone, oh, every time I learn something, repetition and vividness are the main factors. When you understand that, then you can actually design the strategy to learn. When you don't understand it, you inadvertently learn things that don't serve you. Because your habit forming and power is tracking. So every time you do something that doesn't serve you, say a negative action,
I'm smoking.
every time you do it, you're learning to do it better.
Yeah. Oh, I've learned to smoke much better. Thank you.
So we can go the other direction. So the thing is, if you cultivate a starting point that's beneficial, then you will spend more of your time on a learning curve that's going in a beneficial direction. And as you do that, the more you do it, the easier and better it gets. I have a lot of people that say, oh, I'm not the kind of person that can do that. Some lofty go, I'm not the kind of person that can do that. And I say, look, it's not about the kind of person you think you are. Your habit forming power doesn't give an F what kind of person you think you are. If you do this repeatedly, it will become a natural habit. Results are guaranteed.
Yes.
Not by your idea of your personality. Results are guaranteed by habit forming power. The more you do something, the easier and better and more fluid you get at it. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
So that's the good news. Results are guaranteed, but you have to have this starting motivation that's beneficial, and then you have to pick the appropriate activity to manifest it. I don't know if you've, when I was younger, I always wondered about this phrase that the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Good intentions, right?
That doesn't make sense. But then, as I learned more about the nature of the mind, I discovered what that is that all activity starts with a motivation, and that motivation projects the outcome. And that draws you to it. That draws you to take action. So you have a pure motivation and you have a pure outcome. Let's say I have I just got an email from my classmates from college. Haven't seen them for 40 years. I'm in Seattle. Going to have a big reunion in New York, and we all love each other. So I go, oh, yes, I'm going to go. This pure motivation, I'm going to go, full of love. And my vision of being there with them, full of love. We all love and respect each other. So how can you end up in hell? Well, that's because the third aspect of manifestation is taking action. And all activity is governed by the laws of cause and effect.
Now,
Now, everybody might say, I understand that, but what we don't understand is that as we're living our life in the soap opera of our life, we are living according to false laws of cause and effect.
Oh, there's tons
let me get back to that second example. First example, I'm so in love with getting there, so caught up in my vision and my inspiration that I kind of jump in my car in this kind of dreamlike state, and I drive and I drive and I drive, and before I know it, I've ended up in LA because I took I-5 South instead of 90 East. I've ended up in hell instead of in hell.
Yeah, I've driven.
Please forgive me, anybody listening in LA. Please forgive me. It was just kidding.
No, I think they'd agree with you. I've been on those roads too.
That's why good intentions are the road to hell, is because we don't take the time to really appreciate with great respect that everything operates according to the laws of cause and effect. And if we don't pick the right causality, if we don't make the right choices, we are not going to get what we want just because we really want it.
Right.
Now has to do with the morality thing of the soap opera. Some people might take offense at this, but I hope they'll give me a chance to explain. All morality is diluted. Now, when I say that, I'm not moralistically judging it. I am talking from analysis.
Yeah.
And it's very simple. Morality is diluted because it's based upon false laws of cause and effect. Now, I'll give you a very concrete, simple example. And we could go on and on. But let's say here in America, most people would agree it's morally wrong for a grown man to sleep with a young girl. Okay? But if you go to Afghanistan, it's morally correct for a grown man to take an 8-year-old bride. So this makes it obvious, and we could have a million such examples of morality. Clearly that shows that morality is not based on the actual law of cause and effect. It's based on opinions.
Right.
Because the actual law of cause and effect is very simple. If you're dealing with the actual cause, it always produces the same result. Simple example. Water is the cause of wetness.
Good example.
Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or your religion, your ethnicity, your skin color, your personal history. It doesn't matter because water is the cause of wetness.
Yeah.
But if I were to say to you, your mother's ugly, and you said, I feel like punching you, hurt my feelings. That's a statement of causality. You hurt my feelings. We call it blame. It's your fault. But that is a diluted law of cause and effect, and we'll prove it with the real law. Let's say we're gonna say, okay, Chip, maybe you're right, but please give me some time to investigate scientifically. And so you agree. So we line up 10 people, and they're men, women, all ages, all ethnicities, different religions, quite very varied people. And when you do a scientific experiment, you have to have a control. So our control is going to be water. So they're lined up 10 people. You're holding a tray with 10 shot glasses of water. We stop in front of each person, and I pick a shot glass. I throw it in their face. Do you have any doubt that each person's going to get wet?
I have no doubt.
No. Okay, because water is the cause of wetness. Now, they all dry off, and now we start at the beginning of the line again, and to each person, I say the exact words with the exact tonality and the exact body language. I say, your mother is ugly. First person might agree with me. Second person might cry. Third person might try to punch me. Fourth person might space out. Entirely understandable, right? Which proves that me saying your mother is ugly is not the cause of anything. If it were the cause, each person would have to have the same response, just like water produce wetness. What we don't understand is that hearing me say your mother is ugly, that's perceptual data. It means nothing until you give it meaning. So each person's response is not the response to me saying your mother is ugly. It's the response to what they think about me saying that.
Yeah.
So they create their own happiness or their own suffering. It's never somebody else's fault. If you want to blame the real source, it's your own thinking.
Yeah.
Never the other person. It's your own thinking.
It is.
And if people understand that, we wouldn't have any war. We would feed everyone. It's so tragically simple.
Yeah, it is.
And we all overlook it.
Yeah.
We don't live by it.
With that in mind, I'd like to ask you your thoughts on something I call the Julia Roberts factor. It was a movie with Richard Gere called Pretty Woman. She was, most everybody's seen the film, and, he's asking her why, such a vivid and attractive young woman is selling herself on the streets. And she basically said, well, it's just easier to believe the bad stuff. The bad stuff is easier to believe, whether it's about yourself or just about anything else. And it seems there's a cultural precedent to that, especially in the Western world. And so helping us improve our own causality, if you will. I say there's good days and bad days. And even the bad days have moments in them that make you smile, make you feel warm inside, bring you joy, create some magic out of nowhere. And if you focus, when you look back on your days, the good moments, then you'll come to expect joyful things almost, it helps influence this good causality pattern. But that Julia Roberts factor seems to always get in the way. And you even said, well, I know, but in order to do that, I don't know if I can do it. If I'm going to meditate, I don't think I have the time to meditate. They always have, that tripping point without realizing that if they get sick and see 18 specialists and go to friends and family and everybody else, they don't start healing until they flip that trigger, and they don't really understand that. That's part of healing causality too. They have to be the ones that flip the switch and go, well, okay, then maybe everybody's right. But with that Julia Roberts factor really affecting everything, I'm sure you've seen it in your work and everything, and just your general thoughts on that in this whole causality conversation.
Yeah. So the reason that we have that experience is because of what we already talked about, that we have a hardwired habit-forming power. Whatever you do repeatedly becomes not only familiar and effortless, but we develop the belief it's reality. It's not reality. It's just familiar and easy. So she's, they were two, adults. So we typically frame things somewhat in present time, like it's easier to believe the negative. She's talking in present time, it implies in present time, but really it comes from childhood. And let me give you a visual. So when we're born, we're unself-consciously free manifestations of life itself. We're like moment by moment, we're going Yahoo, just unself-conscious, liberated, spontaneous manifestation. Yahoo, Yahoo. At a certain point, this Yahoo gets punished, gets inhibited. Now, the mind, a lot of people think children are just little adults, and that's not true. A lot of people think children are fully formed once they come out of the womb, and that's not true. And one of the most crucial things to understand about that is that roughly until the age of 7, we don't have a fully functioning brain. Specifically, the frontal cortex is not functioning. Specifically, that means we have no critical faculty. It's impossible for us to understand what's really going on. So without that critical faculty and trying to just build a structure of understanding of body-mind, let alone the external world, children don't understand the separation between them and their mother initially. There's no sense of object permanence, things like that. So, but more simply put, a child, just think about it, being like 1 or 2 feet tall, and you have these giants 6 feet tall, and they're doing all kinds of things you can't understand. But you do have an instinctive sense, not a conscious, not a conceptual sense, but an instinctive sense that you are dependent upon them for life. They have the power of life and death. The power of life and death is the definition of a God. So they are gods to you. Because you don't have a critical faculty, you cannot understand that they have inner lives. You don't understand that they have burdens, that they are motivated by inner confusions. They're gods. Whatever they do is law of the universe. So you're going Yahoo, Yahoo, Yahoo. They hit you. You can't think, wow, mom and dad must have had a fight last night. She had no right to do that. You think, I have just been taught a law of the universe. I spilled my milk 3 times. I got hit and locked in my room. Law of the universe.
Yeah, we won't spill no more spill.
I spill my milk. that means I deserve to be punished. Law of the universe. No second opinion. So consider how many thousands of messages you get like that before the age of 7. Repetition. And they're gods. So remember, we learn by repetition and vividness. Most of those repetitions are incredibly vivid. So it becomes a very powerful habitual learning, which means once it becomes habitual, like learning to talk, learning to walk, learning to drive a car, ride a bike, awkward in the beginning, but once you learn it, effortless, it's reality.
Muscle memory.
You can't even reproduce it. You don't know. It's just reality. So all of these horrible attacking messages you think are reality. You think it's the nature of the universe. That's why it's easy to believe the negative.
Sure.
Plus, because they are gods, they have no inner lives. And the only place you can look for the source of the problem is this exuberant energy going Yahoo. So the tragedy is that part of our organism is this, you mentioned before, this hardwired survival instinct, which is designed to push away insults so that we can keep living. But when you're in this naive state without a frontal cortex, you can't properly interpret what's going on. You turn your survival instinct against your joyful being, because your joyful being is the only thing you can identify as being the problem. A little child will literally go in their room and they'll start talking to themselves. They'll point their finger, maybe they'll use their dolls. You got me in trouble. It's your fault. I hate you. And they're talking about their joy. We get taught to kill joy. Abusive parenting is killjoy. They're killjoys.
Yeah.
And we buy into it. Mm-hmm. We have no other choice. We don't have a discriminating faculty to recognize there's an alternative.
No. And if
we had a discriminating faculty, mm-hmm. They're still giants, but we would recognize what they're doing is not fair, but we would recognize they don't have the integrity to hear that. So I am going to strategically cool it. I am going to stop being joyful on the outside, but I'm not going to kill it on the inside. I'm going to secretly in my inner life stay self-loving, self-valuing, self-joyful, and just play it cool when I'm around these crazy giants. Because I know this is a temporary situation. When you have a critical faculty, it's temporary. When you don't, you think it's going to be this way forever. Child doesn't know it's going to grow up. This is way forever.
Yeah.
So if you had the critical faculty, you'd have an alternative. Just be cool. Stay self-loving, self-respecting secretly, and just submit to their rules until you can get out of there. Yeah. But we don't do that. Very few people do that. Most people, because there's no alternative, powerful hypnotic indoctrination that the reality is I don't deserve love. In fact, I hate myself. I'm no good. I don't do, and plus my absolute prime motivation is I have to hide the horrible flaw that's at the core of my being, because if anybody sees it, they can throw me away.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of it come to the surface in just about everybody I know. I personally, I'll attribute to stars and planets, because there are just some times where your faults, inadequacies, insecurities, and whatever just rise to the surface for one reason or another. But by the time we have this capacity, as you said, where they're not giants anymore and everything like that, it's pretty much too late. But very few people realize, at least outwardly or objectively speaking, that most of their belief systems have nothing to do with them. It's something that was drilled into them before they had the capacity to know that. And by the time they do have the capacity, they'll start taking the credit for, that's what I believe. But in reality, it's not what you believe. It's what you were drilled to believe by these giants. Especially when we're talking about abuse, I think I'm one of the only people that I know that didn't have a background of abuse, and so I feel kind of left out. Not that I would, prefer it the other way, but, I'm very vehement in my passion to help others. I mean, it's part of what I use this profile to do, to make kindness interesting, to help people find new and different ways to, change their life or find their own life path or soul path, or learn these types of things that we're talking about right now. I just kind of found an interesting way to make kindness and self-worth interesting. Because even I wouldn't watch a show with everybody doing kind stuff all the time, because especially in media, they make it dreadfully boring. They find a way to do that, or normally they'll find a way to show one nice thing and then compare it to how bad everything really is now. So there's that. And I'm sure you've seen it to the point it probably even frustrates you that how few people realize or have been taught or told that most of their beliefs are, came from somebody else.
Yeah, the thing is, the problem is not beliefs per se. The problem is, without noticing, we develop the subtle attitude that a belief is the truth. But it's very simple. Beliefs, by definition, are beliefs. All beliefs are equal in that they're beliefs. But if you, for whatever reason, have invested in a belief, you tell yourself it's the truth. If everyone just maintained the awareness that beliefs are just beliefs, could be a lot more respectful of each other. But as soon as you think your belief is the truth, you might kill somebody who doesn't have the same belief. I mean, we see that every day.
And more every day.
It's tragic that it's that simple.
Yeah.
But that's the power of subtle influence of unexamined hypnotic suggestions. Mm-hmm. This suggestion, your belief is the truth. By definition, a belief is not the truth. Beliefs are only beliefs. Belief can never be anything but a belief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
it's the truth, it's like water. Water being wet is an example of the truth. Mm-hmm. A truth is true for everyone, so there's nothing to have war about.
Yeah. And the whole notion of alternative truths. That's kind of a not in a political sense, in a cultural sense. It's disconcerting in the first place, and it's even more disconcerting how easy it is to have a whole bunch of people going, "Oh, cool," So it changes the flavor of wetness. It makes I think it's good for our business because they'll have a lot more clients. But it used to be that, for example, I didn't want to bring my daughter into this world. I was happy to have a daughter coming, but this world, and she was born right after the Columbine thing. So now there's school shootings, and once that started, there will be other ones. And nowadays, it's just kind of a dime a dozen. It's gotten to that whole thing because it's hard. The programming that is subtle, like you mentioned. Language is a very dangerous thing, and people don't really. If I say I'm going to the store, if I use that sentence, this is part of radio training, but it's also part of what we're talking about. I am going to the store. I am going to the store. I'm going. Whatever word you heighten in that sentence changes the flavor of that sentence. It changes the flavor of that meaning. So language can be used in a whole lot of ways, and you understand, like brainwashing. The most simple recipe for that is to create a fear, really heighten it and demonstrate it, and be the only one that can solve it. And that's the recipe for a general term brainwashing. But now, you can see it in a whole lot of places. It makes it a lot more difficult to put people in a a state of mind where any given day they can just, pick up on this concept that we've been talking about and run with it, because there's so many things that trip them up. And when you realize, that you're talking to somebody about creating your own reality, and people are objecting, or even getting defensive. What the hell do you mean creating my own? It's hilarious in a very sad way.
Well, I have an advantage in that I don't say that to them unless they've come to see me, so I have an hour and a half to make it very clear to them. I wouldn't say it passing somebody on the street, because then...
Right. Yeah, I just don't stop people. That's like, by the way.
So, but it helps people, these simple understandings help people make rapid transformational shifts. It's not a struggle. That's another big belief, that a change has to be a struggle.
Right.
It's not a struggle.
No.
If you know what to do, it's not a struggle. If you don't know what to do, it's a struggle.
Sure. But also, if you know what to do and have the right motivation tools,
right,
to make it cool to change, that makes it all the more easier. That's what you do in your work. Because he's also got a webinar that starts in May, and that's very soon away, and it ties into just about everything we've talked about, which is even more exciting. It's really about being your own best friend, the advanced class, which is in itself intriguing. And I earnestly believe that nobody can get us there better than our guest tonight, Jack Elias. And I'm very excited about this webinar coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about it? And because it really ties into everything we've been talking about. So it makes for a great segue, and yeah. I'm really anxious to hear your own point of view on this, because it's a very cool thing.
I just want to take a second to pick up on what you said before the break and show people this. This is my first book, Finding True Magic, Transpersonal Hypnosis and Hypnotherapy.
It really has been mentioned a lot with guests that we've had, both on this show here, Timmy's Supernatural Realm. We've had a lot of hypnotherapists and NLP people. We've had alternative healers that almost surprised us in mentioning it, because we weren't specifically speaking hypnotherapy or transpersonal hypnotherapy or NLP at the time.
I appreciate that. This is the new book,
The Outrageous Guide to Being Fully Alive. Yeah, defeat your inner trolls and find your sense of humor.
Reclaim your sense of humor.
Yeah, reclaim your sense of humor. Even with my major big, 5D glasses, I still can't.
So if all the software operates properly, that will be available tomorrow on Amazon in paperback. It's already, the ebook is already available, and also you could get it directly at BookBaby.
BookBaby. Oh, BookBaby.com. Excellent.
So
wow.
It's been there for a while. So being your own best friend, the advanced class, is every Wednesday in May at noon Pacific time for class webinar. And the way I structure the webinars is they're recorded on Zoom, and for the week after each class, the recording is available. You can listen over and over again as much as you want. So it's a huge value for the tuition that you pay.
Yeah, nice.
And it's very interactive. I do actual transformative work, anybody who's willing, right in the class, and everybody is affected because we're all the same.
And water is wet.
It's very powerful. And what we were talking about before, about this, the killjoy process in childhood, that's why it's so difficult to be their own best friend, because they've been trained to be their own worst enemy. And it's been repeated vividly before the age of 7, before they had any defense against it. So it's, for most people, it seems the natural reality. And so people don't even want to hear about being their own best friend. They're very cynical about it. I want to go back. I want to go back to the visual, if people were here from before the break, where this is, we're going Yahoo, and that gets punished. So we learn to shut it down. We start developing this shell, shall we say. Underneath this shell is all the repression, all the repressed habits. This shell then is solidified, shall we say, around the age of 7 when you do get a cognitive faculty. So what happens is the cognitive faculty is on top. And because of all the self-hatred that's been cultivated, now that you have this magnificent tool, you're not allowed to go and unravel this stuff. You don't deserve it. So I'm sure you all know people who have magnificent cognitive faculties who are like masters of the universe, very creative in every kind of way in the outer world, making lots of money, lots of fame, lots of power. But in their inner life, they're miserable. Because all of that potential healing ability can only be used materialistically, not allowed to go in. And that's tragic for so many people. I have clients right now who literally are world famous. People think, wow, they have a perfect life. They're suffering with horrible addictions, horrible self-destructive addictions. So it's very profound. Now, what happens is we're going Yahoo and we get attacked. So consider it this way. You have the space of consciousness. And when you're unharmed little child, that joyful exuberance fills the whole space. When it gets attacked, you start contracting it. That creates a vacuum. You may have heard the phrase, the universe abhors a vacuum. So it's not a one-step thing where you're just going like this. It's simultaneously 2 steps. Every contraction pulling away from filling the space, you fill that space with a construct. You start constructing your false personality. And the euphemism for that false personality structuring process is called socialization. Oh, what darling little boy and girl you have. They're so polite. They don't cause any problem. They sit there properly, blah, 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 blah. It's a euphemism for having been tamed and had your joy killed to a large degree. So it's crucial for people to understand that who they think they are is this false personality that they had to create to replace their true self. Because if they didn't fill the space with that, they'd keep reasserting their true joy and they'd keep getting punished more and more and more. So by turning the survival instinct against your joyful self, you repress it. But you have to, that's too painful all by itself. You have to have a distraction, which is, again, hypnotic process. You have to have a distraction. And the distraction is getting absorbed in the trance of the false self, who you think you are.
Right. You know, you almost make me want to talk to all my self-destructive friends so I can get them to be joyful more often.
Absolutely.
Because they're getting punished for it.
Yeah. And again, the thing about language being inherently hypnotic, one of the main things about it being hypnotic is what you just said. People believe ideas like self-destructive. There is no such thing as self-destructive. Any organism in its right mind does not attack itself. What we call self-destructive is really the destruction that we are indoctrinated into from outside, and now we're in the hypnotic belief that it's our own point of view. It's not our own point of view. It was injected into us. You do not have self-destructive patterns. You have destructive patterns, but you have a right to throw them away. And the way I try to magnetize people's passion to throw it away is to consider the parallel with your body, the immune system of the body. The immune system, very simply put, has 2 functions. It has a janitorial function and it has a war function. The janitorial function sweeps debris out. And the ability to go to war is if you have to kill a pathogen. Now, generally speaking, bacteria are more easily handled by the immune system because it's easy to identify them as being other. Viruses are harder because viruses know how to cloak themselves as self. So they're doing damage. The immune system goes to the place of damage and says, what's going on here? And the viruses say, I don't know, try over there. And so the immune system runs off and creates inflammation. Well, it's the same with your psychic immune system. You have the ability to say no to harmful thoughts. But if they're cloaked as self, you let them in. And the cloaking device is supremely simple. If you hear a thought with your name in it or the pronouns I, me, my, you just open the door and let it in. I hate myself. That is not your thought. It's a thought virus cloaked in the word I. No one truly hates themselves, but we've been indoctrinated into hating ourselves. It's a horrible hypnotic suggestion. And if people start understanding it's a virus, they understand viruses are bad, I'd get rid of viruses, then they'll be motivated to reject those hypnotic suggestions because they see they're thought viruses. No, everybody please listen, no negative attacking thought you have is your own thought. It's a thought virus you've been tricked into embracing. And through familiarity over time, the natural hypnotic evolution of that is it's familiar, therefore you think it's real. It's not reality. It's a diluted negative hypnotic suggestion.
Wow. And I love that you said a moment ago that there's no such thing as self-destructive behavior, because that, I'm gonna smile about that. It's gonna be my happy place. I think.
Definitely.
For the next one.
Definitely. And arouse your self-respect to reject all the invitations to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
They don't belong to you. They're not yours. They're viruses.
Wow. Yeah. Just out of casual curiosity on this, because I made it kind of clear in the introductory segment, my first official chipism, introductory segment about fear. Why I came back to radio really propelled and even more driven to speak on behalf of the anti-fear, because all the time that I was, I'd take a couple of months off and they stormed the Capitol, for God's sakes,
Yeah.
So I wanted to be more proactive in easing fears, even in some of the darkest realms and mysteries that we cover. What propelled you to do a webinar about being your own best friend? Was it something specific that you saw around you going on and saying, you know what, I should do a webinar about this? Or was it a passion project, or what?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the essence of the way I am structuring it is that the root cause of suffering is that people refuse to be kind to themselves. And that builds a pressure to also be unkind to others. So the most important thing, the first step, the square one, the place to begin, is to develop a genuine, constant, self-loving way of relating to yourself. Be kind to yourself in every thought, word, and deed, and then that will naturally radiate out as being kind to everyone else in thought, word, and deed. It's like so cliche and blah, blah, blah. Where's the fancy technique where that's so blah, blah, blah? It's the most important thing. I'll tell you a funny story. I had a woman, I've been certifying people as hypnotherapists for 34 years. And for a lot of that time, I was a lot younger than the people I was teaching. And a lot of them had a lot more kind of official training than I did. So I was delightfully surprised to recognize I always had something to teach them. Excuse me.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
So when this is very early on, maybe 5 or 6 years in, I'm still very young, and I had an older woman, close to retirement, PhD, psychotherapist, decades of practice, and also of German descent. Still had an accent. So at a certain point in the class, I said, okay, and she was one of the people, like she's got a PhD. Come on, I want the most advanced stuff,
Right.
So I said, okay, I'm going to give you the most advanced technique. So I want you to get your pen and paper out and get ready to write. And this is it. This is the most advanced technique. Pretty much all of us in the Western world, because of the benefit of our, being basically first world developed, we all every day have the experience, many times a day, walking in the bathroom. What I want you to do, this advanced practice, is when you walk in the bathroom, you turn and look in that mirror and you smile. And you cultivate a genuine love and joy at seeing that person you see. Well, she blew up. She threatened to leave the class. She said, that is the most insane, ridiculous, crazy thing I've ever heard. What are what are you talking about? Self-love. Where do you get off saying that that's what we need? It's like we need, some sophisticated Freudian and Jungian, Reichian. We need to get, No. So this is the most advanced technique, is to look in the mirror, and you're going to notice all the patterns of self-criticism coming up, all the addictions to focus on the mole or the eyebrow or the this or the ring. You just don't fight that stuff. You smile through it. Have every day. Remember, repetition and vividness, results are guaranteed. If you do this every day, a little more passion, genuinely welcoming yourself with love, the end point of that, like when you really know you're getting there, it will be you walk in the bathroom, you look in the mirror, and your heart spontaneously explodes with joy as if your long-lost friend who you've never seen for decades just appeared. That's the goal.
Yeah.
To have that kind of fresh, brand new, spontaneous joy of recognition every time you see that person in the mirror.
Yeah, I want to get my wife to start doing that and to take the webinar, because that way it'll never put me in a position of having to answer a question like, do I look fat in this dress? Just saying. Keeps me out of the doghouse for.
So just imagine what the world would be like if everybody had that kind of passionate self-love.
I already am. I am imagining.
Let me give you another example. I ask everybody to think of the time they were most happy in their life, even just for a minute, where your heart was just completely open and so grateful to be alive, just this incredible joy. Most people can identify at least a minute or two of that. And when they say, yeah, okay, I'm there, I say, now really be there, and then consider. When you're in that space of feeling that sacredness, that preciousness of being alive, do you think your first thought is going to be, who can I fuck over? Who can I take advantage of? Whose feelings can I hurt? That's everybody's universal response. It's absurd. But it's absurd. But this is so profound. What this proves is that when people are being mean and gossiping and putting other people down and doing harmful things, they are confessing that they have a knife in their heart. Because if they didn't have a knife in their heart, they would be in that state of joy and gratitude for being alive. And it would be the farthest thing from their mind and heart to think of something mean and destructive. It's that simple. People who are being mean are confessing they have a knife in their heart. The reason we don't see that is because from childhood, when they were gods, and we didn't know they had inner lives, we didn't know they had knives in their hearts, we developed the hypnotic conviction that someone being threatening and mean and yelling, that meant they're indestructibly powerful. And that's why people now, as adults, don't realize they go instantly into the state of child psychology. They regress instantly to their childhood pattern if somebody gets angry, because they immediately project, angry person, big, strong, powerful, I'm weak and little and helpless, as opposed to going, angry person, they need help. They have a knife in their heart. Right. All those people you referred to at the Capitol, I'm not saying excuse what they did. We don't excuse what they did, but recognize they were confessing they have knives in their heart.
Right.
It's a profound problem for humanity, for this country, that more and more people are going around with knives in their heart, and they're worshiping knives in their heart as if it's the goal.
Because they're being rewarded for having knives in their heart now, in addition to, I mean, we're in a culture where superheroes are trying to kill each other. The anti-hero is alive and well. And the concern is so many angry people, the shootings that we see every day. Look, I mean, I know if it leads and maybe it's not going on as much as the media would like you to believe. Sometimes they over-report certain things that weren't really happening. I just sit down with my daughter and talk stranger dangers, not because all of a sudden pedophilia had, tripled or quadrupled. The coverage about it and the fear about it was 600% times more than ever before. The media decided to point out pedophilia, to the point where at school, at middle school, we had to sit our daughter down, with the teachers and everything and talk about stranger dangers. But there's so many angry people now. And some of these people are people that I know, that I have seen with that joy that we were just talking about, and it saddens me further. And again, part of the reason I was really propelled to return and to ease fears, and because anger is an offset of fear, and fear is an imaginary thing, but it's a defense mechanism that kind of results from that, or depression and anxiety, and hovering in a corner in a fetal position, or going out there, getting a weapon and saying, well, nobody's going to bully me anymore, nobody's going to push me around anymore. People handle their pain differently. But just that one example that you brought up think about the happiest moment in your life. I mean, just to purposefully do that for a moment, you could feel your own vibration raise up. You could feel that energy that surrounds you more joyful too. It just snowballs in an instant. And at the same time makes it very easy for us to see how simple this kind of stuff is, which really, adds to the thrill of this webinar coming up every Wednesday in May, starting, of course, the first Wednesday in May.
One other thing about that.
Sure.
Excuse me for interrupting. People from all over the world take it. If they're in a time zone where it's unreasonable to participate live, they sign up anyway because they know they have the whole week to watch the video. So there's no scheduling conflicts whatsoever because you have a full week to watch the video. And I'd like to put those two things. Go and stand in front of the mirror, and as you're practicing welcoming yourself, realize that the other side of that is you're pulling the knives out of your heart. If you find it hard to genuinely smile at yourself, recognize that's showing you, the mirror is showing you, you have an opportunity to recognize and pull some knives out of your heart. And you know what those knives are made up? They're made up of thought viruses. They're not your own. Get them out, pull them out, and make the effort to generate loving, kind, respectful attitude toward yourself, because that is square one. That's the place from which you can affect other people. Plus, energetically, for those, you guys do a lot of energetic considerations, past lives, astrology, whatever. When you vibrate, in a loving way, you create an energy field that people who want to be in darkness, people who want to cause harm, they go past you. They're not interested. Yeah. Like attracts like. So one of the best ways to keep yourself healthy is to uplift yourself, because it clarifies your senses, it clarifies your intuition, and you sense other people who have, if they have bad intentions, it's much more easy to sense it and avoid them than if you're blocked from that perception because you're involved in having been habituated to be self-critical and self-hating, quote unquote, self-critical, self-hating. You don't see that. But if you're in a self-loving place, your mind is clarified, literally clarified. You can see other people generating energy of bad intention, and so you don't make the mistake of being seduced by them.
Right. Because, Leo Biscaglia, one of my all-time heroes, I don't know if you're familiar with him. I want to be the Leo Biscaglia of radio instead of the Bob Ross. No offense to Bob Ross, but Leo Biscaglia used to talk about hugging people and how people get so offended by that, But he's just this gentle, caring, loving guy, and he always said kindness begets kindness. I think Mr. Rogers, too, used to actually say that. But it's very true. And the reality is, even today, regardless of what you see on the local news or the national news, you go outside and you can see people doing random acts of kindness on other people. They're helping feed their neighbors who can't get out, can't move around that much, but they're going out of their way to do that without expecting anything in return. It's not manipulative, it's genuine. And you can see that everywhere, even when you think the sky is falling and you're really trained to believe the sky is falling. And that's why I'm so thrilled that you're doing this webinar and the upcoming book we're going to segue to in a moment. But it's just these two acts, smiling in the mirror or thinking about the most joyful period of your life. It's a very simple way to have folks realize, hey, Jack's right. That's not hard at all. I remember when the pandemic began, I was trying to tell people now, okay, instead of thinking, okay, now I can't go out, now I'm stuck here and I'm lonely and I can't get this and what I want and the more and the, that stuff. Well, now you can say, for all the times you said, if I ever had the time, I would do this. I would pick up this hobby or try this profession. Now you have the time. It's an awesome period.
Can't spend all that time in front of the mirror practicing welcoming yourself.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier too. And they were always, finding those excuses. I guess we can call them toxins, if you will. Well, but I'm too busy anyway. Well, but I really have to take care of this person, I got 8 kids running around and they're home now and I can't, they would always find excuses. But when you start with such a really simple thing that is really effective, really fast, it's really a beautiful way to help motivate them to see that it really isn't that hard. And they're really, all they're doing is flipping a switch, and changing that inner dialogue. And that's another thing that comes up here a lot. A lot of programs help people do the self-talk, I am wonderful, and today I'm going to make a difference. All those little mantras that you're obligated in some forums to do, and people grumble about that. So by the time they say, "Wow, I really love myself," they're saying it like they're screaming at their kid for spilling milk. I really love myself because it's a chore. And you have found ways around that. I think you would still encourage people to do something similar, but But you know what I mean, right? I mean, you see that kind of instant objection to, they always find a reason or a toxin when it comes to, oh my God, you're trying to make me better. Well, you can't do that. I'm too busy. Yeah.
I have a paradigm I call the 13 types of confusion that create all of our suffering. And I'll be going into that deeply in next May's webinar. And it comes out of the understanding that language is inherently hypnotic. And so that means you really need to respect words. So everybody talks about confusion. I'm so confused this, confused that. But if you look at the word confusion, you have con, which means with, and fusion means pour together. So you get a state of confusion anytime you pour things together that don't go together. Now, the root confusion from which all the other ones arise is confusing worth of being with judged activity. And this is the root confusion that we get so profoundly habituated to before the age of 7, because all the messages we get that we're being punished for activity, but if we don't have really sane parents, they're invariably communicating the badness of the activity means you're bad. The badness of the activity means you get attacked. So people developed a profound belief that their being, the worth of their being, the right to love themselves, the right to respect themselves, the right to expect others to love and respect themselves is a function of what other people think of their activity, which is why everybody's afraid of what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
I don't have people do positive affirmations because people do positive affirmations in this state of mind. And so they end up, like you just said, they just build up more and more pressure, and then they say, screw that. What I ask people to do is recognize the separation. Recognize that your being is inherently pure. Pure doesn't mean good, not morally good, because morality is about activity. Your being is pure. Pure means one thing and nothing else, like pure water. I'd like everybody to scan your being. Are you made of anything but life itself? I don't think so. We're all pure manifestations of pure life energy. So the essence of being is pure, and it's honorable. It's inherently loving, joyful energy. Activity can be horrible. So the irony is, the golden rule of child rearing is love the child, criticize the activity constructively, but always love the child. Instead of going, you dumb little blah, blah, blah. You go, oh, I am so angry I have to clean up that milk again. And I know you might be feeling scared because you hear me yelling and I'm big, giant God. I love you. I love you. You're not bad. You're precious to me. I just wish I didn't have to clean that up. But I love you. I'm so glad you're in my life. It's worth having to clean that up to have you in my life. You keep affirming purity of being and freely but constructively criticize the activity. So with this positive affirmation thing, people say, I'm good, I'm wonderful. They're trying to make both be one thing and make it all wonderful, as opposed to going, even though I'm angry about this, even though I feel so jealous or critical, I love and respect my being nevertheless. Even though I'm caught up in these negative thoughts and having these negative urges to do something hurtful, I still know that my heart is pure, and that helps me release those negative thoughts and come back to focusing on the purity of my being. When you do that, you don't have positive affirmations that often just increase conflict because they don't realize they're in a state of confusion. The first thing you always need to do is separate the confusions. And like I said, it was Paradigm 13 Types of Confusion that I'll be going into in the webinar.
And that's excellent. Would it be fair to say that throughout this webinar, as we learn to become, in the advanced class, becoming our own best friend, that the term the sense, the thought. Blame just goes out the window.
Yeah.
Because I see people that are criticized for always blaming others for their own misfortunes, or for always blaming themselves for other people's.
And the thing that keeps that going is that people don't realize they're fighting around inside a soap opera of morality. There's no end to that because it's not grounded in the real laws of cause and effect. So you can make up whatever you want. Yeah. But when you understand that blame is a diluted way of thinking, it's not morally bad. It's simply a diluted way of thinking because it's attributing causality where there isn't any causality. In other words, my saying your mother is ugly, there's no causality in that. You feel hurt feelings because you're agreeing with me and you don't acknowledge that.
Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
If as soon as you heard the word mother, your heart swelled with the love you have from your mother, and she's beautiful to you, you'd say, Jack, you don't know what you're talking about. You wouldn't blame me for hurting her. If you have hurt feelings, it's because you're agreeing and you're guilty about it. That's all your own thought process, not on me.
True. And ironically enough, I think of the span, this whole bell curve of reactions from that, because some people would just kill over something like that, Yeah. And some people would just say, I thought I was the only one.
Yeah, they're motivated to kill because they're so entrenched in diluted notions of causality. They don't really understand what makes things work.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to ask you about that morality we were talking about, because I think about it a lot, how we are really a species of animals. I mean, we were, born on the food chain. We've been this species, modern Homo sapiens, 60,000 years, most of that. No homes, no running water, no air conditioning, electricity, internet. We were in the middle of the food chain. I also say that ESP is a real thing, because without that feeling in the pit of your gut that there's some nocturnal animal stalking you in the dark, we wouldn't be here to talk about it, 60,000 years later. But it's hard to imagine a species of wild animal becoming civilized, becoming moral and ethical beings. Do you think that overstates that idea that you were talking about of how morality is really not part of the laws of the universal laws of cause and effect?
Well, morality is a product of thinking. Animals don't have morality. They run by instinct. We think, which means we fantasize. All of our thinking is fantasy. It's all just constructs. It's like you were saying, fear is fantasy. That all that means is it has no self-existence. You can't go buy fear at the store. If you don't create it, and maybe better than using the word fear, fearful thinking. If you don't put energy into fearful thinking, there's no fear. So it's in that sense that it's a fantasy. It's a creation. It does. If you don't create it, it's like if I don't wave my hand like this, my hand isn't waving. It's very simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So animals can't do that. They can have instinct. They can have fight or flight, but that's different from psychological fear. Psychological fear requires a storyline, requires self-conscious storyline. I'm afraid that this is going to happen to me. And then we have the ability to keep imagining, whoa, it might happen next time, or almost happened, or blah, 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 blah. And so we keep triggering the adrenaline. We keep shocking our system. Whereas an animal, if they escape the tiger, they go off someplace and they literally shake. They shake all the stress hormones out of themselves, and then they're reset as if nothing happened. We have the ability to do that, but we don't do it because we haven't mastered the proper way to use our thinking mind. We use it to generate thought viruses against ourselves.
Yeah. That's what all 60,000 years to come up with, and that's what we've come up with. But I really do. I absolutely love the way you're presenting these things and ideals, and it's surprisingly unique. I mean, you know, I do the past life regression hypnosis personally when I was doing smoking cessation, even though that's a bit ironic because, you know, I'm a smoker. It's shamanic though, you know. I'm at one with the leaf. So, and think of all the roads and bridges I'm helping to build with the extra taxes I pay, you know, just for that. It's unique among hypnotherapists, and I can see now why people would name drop you, you know, on a show like this or on when Tim and I doing Supernatural Realm episodes, and we're talking to, you know, so I'm healers of all kinds, you know, alternative healers of all kinds, not necessarily in hypnotherapy or NLP. You know, I wanted to touch on something with NLP since I got myself there on this little tributary I just took with the neuro-linguistic program. And what I best remember about that, and maybe you can help refresh me on this, because it was fascinating, is there are some people who are visual oriented, and they'll say things like, "I see what you mean, I see what you mean," and they're generally creative and outgoing. Then there are people that are hearing based, and they will say things like, "I hear you, I hear what you mean," and they're a little more reserved or more openly logical minded. Then there are people who are feeling oriented, who are generally overwhelmed because of that. You know, we have this thing in the psychic field we call empaths, people who are exceptionally empathic or empathetic. They can, you know, I can feel everything. I feel everybody's emotion. I can go into a Walmart and know exactly how each and every person is feeling. I get bombarded by it. Timmy too. And it's really overloading. But as a, I guess, personality trait, if it's fair to categorize them that way, that's one of the most fascinating things I took out of all of NLP is that some people, just by characteristic, favor one sense more than the others. And it has a lot to do with their general personality characteristics, their general belief structure, their general suggestibility as clients. And your thoughts on that, even though I just touched on them.
The most important thing is to get away from the hypnotic quality of nouns. We're taught that nouns are things. So whenever we label something, we more or less have a hypnotic attitude that we're dealing with a thing. But the reality is always activity. There's only activity. We're dealing with activity. So when you say personality trait, that sounds like a thing. And so people might say, I have this personality, this is my personality. And so then they intensify their hypnosis that I'm this thing. Whereas everything you described about the different sensory channels, those are styles of habitual learning. They're not locked in. You can learn to expand your competency in using the other sensory channels. But if you believe in these nouns that I'm a visual person, then you will tend to say, no, I can't do that. I can't listen. I have to see it. I'm a visual person. So it builds necessary roadblocks of hypnotic limitation about anytime you identify with some quality of competency or behavior as being a thing. And it's a thing I like, so it's part of me, or it's a thing I don't like, so it's not part of me. All kinds of noun thinking creates confusion and lack of clarity and unnecessarily limits a person's appreciation of their ability to learn and expand their competencies.
Wow, I love how you put that, because I guess a huge thing to me, including these paranormal types of fields, but mostly in medicine and mental health systems, is self-fulfilling prophecy. To me, that's a huge, huge element. It's like post-traumatic stress. I think every single person on the planet is in some level of self-traumatic stress because of the programming that's out there, and this all the danger, the pandemic and the politics and all this danger. And it's like, okay, somebody smarter than me says I'm a diabetic, so I am going to believe that. I'm going to discount anybody who contradicts this person smarter than me that told me I am diabetic, and I'm going to go out of my way to find confirming information for this. That's been a huge part of everything, and I like. I just like the way you put everything.
Thank you.
And I guess I'm going to segue that into the book that is actually already an e-book on what was it? Book Baby? I didn't write it.
Book Baby is where you can get the paperback. This is on Book Baby. It will also be on Amazon if all the software works out by tomorrow. Amazon already has the ebook version.
Wow. Well, that's awesome, but so is this still. And so now, kind of the same question as the webinar. What propelled you for this new book, and
sure,
what is in it that excites you specifically?
Well, the content of everything I do is explaining these, ironically, supremely simple but profoundly in need of constant, new, and refreshing explanation, because we keep missing it. So, to my mind, I'm always talking about the same thing, which I now have put together as this new paradigm of the 13 types of confusion. In terms of the actual way the book came to be is about 2 years ago, I did a Q&A with a couple of people, and they had taken the time to put together some really good questions. So we broke it up into about 25 little video clips that you can see on my YouTube page, by the way. So I also have YouTube/Jack Elias, my YouTube channel, as well as my jackelias.com blog. But anyway, those quick answers I gave to these questions developed into this book. I wrote articles based on each one of them, and then added others and turned it into this book. So the book is very, very heavy on explicit things you can do to help yourself, as opposed to being a lot of vague philosophy. So it's very, proactive? Nuts and bolts?
Yeah.
Do you feel it? Am I making it clear? Do you see what I mean? Can you hear me?
And here's hoping someday that this interview will propel a next book from you.
Okay.
But that's my ego talk. Great article about the trans. You wrote something about the ego that was in a blog. I think it dates back to the True Magic days. But
it's what's the title of it? I don't remember the title, but hey, anybody wants to email me, I'll be glad to dig out the link and send it to you.
Yeah, Waking Up from the Trance of Ego. There it is.
You found it, okay?
Yeah. No, I kind of had it in the background. I'm trying to go more blind than having the page right in front of me.
Okay.
I tend to ask broader questions.
I'm glad you found it. I think it'll be very helpful to people.
We're getting close to being out of time here.
Okay. All right. Oh, I see that. All right. Well, then Book Baby, the book's out right now, and Amazon tomorrow. Yeah, a copy that you can hold in your hands will be released tomorrow, which is...
come to my May webinar.
Yeah, the webinar. Don't forget about that. Is it at You can find it, I'm sure, through jackelias.com.
Yeah, it's on the training page on jackelias.com. Also, if you're on Facebook, you can find it at I have several Facebook pages, Jack Elias Facebook page, also Transpersonal Hypnosis and Hypnotherapy, NLP. That's my main business page. The announcements are there.
Yeah, that's the one
if you just Google Being Your Own Best Friend, the advanced class, I'm sure it'll come up.
Yeah, and that's every Wednesday in May. And so you have time to sign up for that webinar, Being Your Own Best Friend.
Yes.
And everything he said, the YouTube page, the Facebook pages, and Jack Elias, ELIAS. I can do it from musclememory.com, jackelias.com. Thank you for being our first guest for the big return for Kindness Beyond the Veil. It really, in my heart, makes it fully worthwhile that we could have you join us, and we thank you, Jack Elias, for being here. Hopefully, we can have you back again sometime.
Yes,
I think we need to. That'd be phenomenal. And mutual friend Dr. Rita Louise says hi. And
you know Rita.
I do.
She took my training decades ago.
Yeah, she was raving about you. Probably one of the people that dropped your name when she was on.
She's still just 39.
That's true. Well, Jack, thank you so much. Tim Roxbury, our great producer, thank you for having me back on Trim Radio, WTRMradio.com, each and every Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, or right here. Plus, we'll be on Restream also, so you can watch or listen. Next week, we have the great Matt Haas. He's been a paranormalist for a long time, and he's working on a museum of objects. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because we want to tease a little bit to bring you back. But have no fear. Really speaking, we're back. We're honored to be back. Thank you for joining us here on Kindness Beyond the Veil. We'll see you next Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Yeah, we're back, baby. And again, great thanks to the wonderful Jack Elias for starting us off in kind of a way that really met my dreams and ideals. It's a beautiful thing.
My pleasure. And I put the link to the webinar in the chat box to you.
Oh, excellent. All right.
So you can let people know.
Yeah, and I'll be posting on my pages, Kindness Beyond the Veil. You can find on Facebook. You can find a page on WTRMradio.com. We'll have the link there for you. And Chip the Kindness Guy, my business page, I'll put that link up there also, so you can find it. Check out this webinar. Awesome. And the book, The Outrageous Guide to Being Fully Alive. I'd like to do that again. I'm mostly alive.
Yeah. Everybody remember to smile in the mirror.
That's right. Yeah. And think of the happiest moments in your life and see how easy it is to just trigger positive change. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.